So here we're going to look at some of the main tools for monetary control. Essentially, if we look through this situation, we could see that there's different ways to controlling the amount of money in circulation. We see that with commercial banks it might be tricky, but what are some of the ways? Open market operations, foreign exchange market operations, changes in reserve requirements we've just talked about, and changes in the overnight rate is the one that we're going to talk a lot about. We'll see as the main tool, but let's just look at the other ones, how it works. So open market purchases is essentially the purchase and sales of government bonds, securities to change money supply. So think about it that when the Bank of Canada sells bonds to the public, well, those bonds, they sell them to the public, they get money in exchange, and for the time that they get that money and the bond is not mature yet, that money sits within the Bank of Canada's vault, and that money is no longer available for loans and other things. This is not a commercial bank, so when they take that money away, they're essentially, when they sell bonds to the public, they're taking away money from the public, and it's decreasing the money supply. If they buy bonds from the public, well, they're getting these pieces of paper that they're putting in the vaults, but in exchange they're giving money, so it injects money back into the money and into the public, and it increases the money supply. So even though this is not necessarily the main tool that we'll focus on, this does happen in practice. They do play around with this to a certain level. Foreign exchange market operations is buying and selling of foreign reserves to increase or decrease the amount of Canadian money in circulation. We'll talk about that more when we talk about fixed exchange rate in the future. Changing reserve requirements. This is difficult because the Bank of Canada does not control the amount of money banks choose to lend, which we talked about in the money creation process. And since 1994, the government has completely phased out this requirement on minimum reserves. So what's the solution used? Well, it is going to be to target the overnight interest rate. To target an interest rate directly is what's used by most central banks because it's easier to control. It's what matters to increase investment and to have an influence on other things. We'll see when we get into monetary policy. And it's also easier to communicate than changes in money supply. If we were to tell the population, well, the money supply is going to go from this amount of million to this amount of million, most people wouldn't really understand. But if you tell them that interest rates are going to go from 2% drop down to 1%, that they could easily relate to, and that they could easily see what the implications are of that. So those are the main tools to control the money supply. Let's dive into the overnight interest rate a little bit further in this next series of video.